Hello and welcome to another episode of Soul Nectar Show, that show where we talk about all things essence, where we gather around the campfire and we share our stories of connection to that which is bigger than us, to the big mystery, to the beyond the veil, to that larger presence that is just so hard to put your finger on exactly what it is and what we're here to do. What we think we know, we have a glimpse of the truth, and then we think we know, and then the truth evolves. And it's so fun to have these conversations. I'm your host, Carrie Hummingbird. I love to gather around the campfire with you and share these tales from beyond. And I love to have people on my show or just, expand your thinking on things so that you can really explore your own ideas about what's real and what's not, and what you're here for and what you're not here for, and who you are and who you aren't, and is all really awesome stuff. And I love taking people on that journey. So if you're interested in that kind of thing, Butterfly Circle's coming up. We have 3 entry points in May, September, and January for the ultimate adventure, your life. Your life, not just, listening to other people's stories. So let's get on with the show. Today, I have a good friend back on the show, GP Walsh. Welcome, GP.
Hi, Carrie. So good to be here.
GP is one of my favorite people because he lists himself as the Irreverent Sage, and I can completely relate to that. Irreverence is my favorite. So GP is here. He's a true spiritual master. He's full of compassion, wisdom, and playfulness. He's been teaching and healing for over 30 years and touched thousands of people with an uncanny ability to know just what someone needs to make a breakthrough. And I got to say, if you watch Soul Nectar Show for a long time, 3 years ago being a long time, you would see like one of my first episodes was with GP, like way back in the day. And he really helped me. He gave me such a great metaphor with the president going to the White House, and everyone thinks the fanfare is the president, but then actually the president's going in the back door silently unseen, which is a metaphor, but you guys will talk about some of that. So GP was the son of a schizophrenic mother and an absent father, and so his earliest memory is being tied to his bed to help keep him from wandering off. The years of abuse and emotional deprivation were offset by a natural gift for and a love of truth, as we'll be hearing about his unquenchable curiosity about people really heal and awaken, and how does that happen. And so lots of amazing stories here, and a big, amazing journey. He studied with Muji, which is amazing too. I also have been really intrigued by Muji's teachings. He's an energy healer, a meditation master, a world-class storyteller, which is the best part. And he takes the most difficult life teachings and makes them easily understandable and practical, which is such a gift. And Jack Canfield called GP one of the best storytellers in the world, and personally invited him to become a member of the prestigious Transformational Leadership Council. So he's a founder of the Master Heart Institute and the creator of Inner Reconciliation, the culmination of his many decades of research and practice. And we'll be hearing a little bit more about that as we get going. So GP, wow. Like, I'm not sure I knew that first part. When I just read that about your journey, I'm not sure I knew that part about you, that you had a schizophrenic mother. I think the place I entered your story before was really about your own journey with addiction and facing that inevitable moment of like not wanting to be here. But I didn't know your story with your mom. That's a little crazy making. I have a little personal I have personal experience with that as well. I'm realizing, it's kind of like when you think something's sane and then you realize, wait a second, that was completely not sane. And I was being gaslit most of my life.
Yes.
It's what is reality and what is truth becomes the eternal question for somebody such as you and I. What is truth? Whose reality is correct? And it's a big question.
And that is what gets inspired when you get past the pain of it. You do wonder where can I actually put a stake in the ground? When you're dealing with somebody, normally in childhood, even if it's bad, at least it's consistently bad. And your nervous system then has the opportunity to make whatever adjustments it needs to survive, right? They're not always good. Oftentimes it repress a lot of our stuff and their habits and patterns of behavior we have to overcome later because they don't really serve us. serve us, but they work in the moment. I mean, that's what our nervous systems do. It finds a way to survive even in the most horrible circumstances. But it's a different thing altogether when the circumstances are unpredictable,
Yes.
because now it doesn't know what to do at all. So for me, it was just total vigilance. I had no idea who was going to show up. I had no idea whether I was going to be, talked to or yelled at. I had no idea what to expect whatsoever. So I was just constantly on edge. I was the Artful Dodger. It was just always looking for any kind of sign as to how I should show up to keep from getting hurt. And it just wreaks havoc on your nervous system. It literally took me decades, even after a deeply profound spiritual experience, which kind of wiped out all the whole drug thing. It still took me decades to really cleanse that from the system. And just the other day, I'm like, I was walking somewhere, and I'm just, and this little voice says, "You shouldn't be happy." And I go, now I know what it is, right? And it doesn't catch me anymore. But I go, my God, you're still here.
Yeah. Isn't that amazing? A whole
Yeah,
lifetime,
a whole lifetime. Yeah.
and it's
And
still
it
there.
may never go away. The good news is, though, these things don't have to go away. We simply have to be conscious enough to know what they are, so they don't suck us into the story anymore. At that point, it's just, it's like a radio playing in another room. You just ignore it, right? And maybe those conditionings will eventually purge themselves from the system. Maybe not. I don't know, but they don't affect me anymore. They don't dictate for me. I'm not unconscious and just falling into that story, which is where the real pain lies. Once you identify with it, you're stuck with it. But if you don't, you're still in the realm of consciousness and choice and freedom, and that's what matters, to be free.
What's really interesting to me is I am on this journey since July of healing the mother wound. Well, I mean, my whole life, but in terms of writing a book, healing the mother wound from July, because I published my book, The Second Wave, and then immediately got tapped on the shoulder by my guide, White Buffalo Calf Woman, said, "Okay, it's my turn." And I was like, okay, what are we writing? We're writing a book called Fierce Love, Healing the Mother Wound. Okay, great. I knew I've been working on this in my own life, so that makes sense. And then I thought I would just sit down and channel this book. No, it doesn't work that way. Shoot.
Wouldn't it be nice?
It
Wouldn't
was
that
so
be
nice.
nice?
The other book worked that way. I mean, I sat down, I channeled the book, and the book was done. And I was like, thank you, White Eagle. And now I have this other book where it is experiential. It's deep. It's in my body. Like, it's literally in my body. It's sometimes painful to sit because it's in my body so much. And I'm like working through all of this painful stuff, like releasing things from my cellular memory and my tissues and my body, holding on to things and afraid, and just also like how literal things are, GP, like how literal the healing is. Like, literally my ass hurts, just to be totally frank. And I remember, like, my mom would say to me, like, all the time, "You're such a pain in the ass." And I cannot help but know that that is part of what's causing my ass to
Yes.
hurt right now. Is because
Yes.
I can almost, like, my body's saying, "You're being a pain in the ass because you're upsetting your mom by doing all the things that she doesn't want you to do, and she's not talking to you, and that's why. And you're writing this book, The Healing the Mother Wound, and my body is showing me, like, how bad I am, because my body's trapped all of those messages in it, and I'm like doing the
Yes.
work to rewire it so that my ass doesn't hurt anymore. I have a very good motivation to do this work. So I can sit in a chair and not be freaked out.
No, and that's the brilliant insight. It is energetic, and it is your body. I mean, it's completely embedded there. And when I realized that, it's probably about 20 years ago. Boy, what a difference it made. It eventually led to inner reconciliation, where I don't consult with the mind at all anymore. I go directly into that energy field of the body, which is way more than just the physical form that we're beholding. There's a whole lot more to it. And it's just, there's all sorts of things stored there. And we need to create, you can't do self-help on the body. right? You have to give it the space. It knows what to do. It knows how to discharge the energy. It knows why the stuff is there. It has all the information you need, but we have to listen to it. In order to do that, we have to create an inner environment of safety. I mean, total safety, which means you have to be willing to accept whatever is happening in whatever form it's happening completely and totally with no resistance whatsoever. That's the mission. Now, it's hard to do at first. It's a practice. It takes time. It takes time to get there. But if you realize that this a constant barrage that you're not enough, you got to be different, change this, change that, you know, you're not adequate as a kid, right? The message gets in. Even the attempt, if we try to do self-help, what are we doing? We're trying to fix, we're trying to change, we're trying to correct it. We're doing exactly the same thing to ourselves that put us in that position in the first place, which is why self-help doesn't work. Another one of my irreverent quotes that people don't like to hear. It doesn't work, and that's the reason why. Because even with the best of intentions, I'm going in with the idea that I know what should be happening. This is how you're supposed to be, and I'm going to fix you. And what that does is immediately puts the nervous system in defensive posture. It's going to dig in its heels, and believe me, it is way better at fighting this battle than you are. There's only one thing you can do, and that is completely drop the conflict. Meet it on its own terms. Just say, you know, I haven't been listening. I'm sorry. I'm listening now. And just drop all resistance, no matter what happens. And that then, with that kind of level of self-acceptance, which is really unconditional love, there's no defense for that. The body does not have to defend itself anymore. And that's when the stuff starts getting discharged. You can just literally feel the energy come out of your body. And it's a revelation.
Like,
It's a
I literally
revelation.
just sit and hold parts of myself there, you know, like in that
Yes.
I just hold it and I go, I'm so sorry you're in so much pain. You know, like that's literally what I do. I just say, I'm so
Yeah, literally.
sorry. I'm so sorry that you're in so much pain and that this pain got caused for you in your life. I'm so sorry you ever got that message.
Yes, that's it.
Really sorry. That's it.
And
Like
you just be, and then you be present. You
I
just
just
be
listen to it and I just
present.
say,
Yes.
yeah, like it really hurts right there or whatever, you know?
And it will tell you the story of it, because it's the only thing that knows the origin of it. You know, our minds think we do. We put together piece parts of stories in life that are completely untrustworthy. They're not. Our stories aren't reliable, but the body knows exactly what happened, and it knows exactly what it needs to discharge that energy. So you just listen to it. It will do it. And sometimes I've seen the energy just discharge, boom, gone. Other times I've seen the memories come up, the whole picture come up. It's whatever the body needs to do to discharge it, not you. So my whole, as I started to realize that, my whole approach to spiritual and energy healing just shifted. And I used to think I was smart. Now I know I'm dumb as a post. I just listen. I'm just present.
Yeah, we had
I'm
to
just
just
the
listen.
space in which it happens. I'm not the cause of it.
And really the reason I've realized that my own resistance to it, making it want it to go away and things like that, is because when I actually listen to it and spend time with it, then it starts to discharge and it's noxious. Like the feelings inside that space as they start to discharge are painful and like really black cloudish, you know, like it's just really hurtful energy.
Yes,
So I don't, you know, so yeah, so I have to get, if I want to understand myself, I need to be present with that energy and know that that's part of what I've experienced, like almost witness my own journey before I was conscious. Like I feel like it's witnessing
that's
my
exactly
journey
it.
before I was conscious. Like this
That's
is what I
exactly
went
what it is.
through.
That's exactly what it is. And it was so painful that the body had to shove it off in the corner and build buffers so that you wouldn't feel it. Because if you felt it in the unconscious state, it would kill you. So the body is smart enough to know it does not want that to happen. And so it pushes it off, and it has to wait until we become conscious enough to let it discharge, which means to be present with those intense feelings and fears and diminishments that we simply could not bear at the times that they happened. The good news is is you don't have to relive the whole thing. This is not abreactions. I did that stuff back in the 80s and 90s. That was, you thought you had to do that, but you don't. The body knows how to discharge this stuff in the most gentle and natural way. So it's not like you're going to be racked with pain. It'll trickle it out as it needs to. You just increase that willingness to be lovingly present and say, I'm sorry this happened to you. I really am sorry. What can I do to relieve this? How can I help you? And just really show up as a good friend. And then it works. It works. And the stuff gets, and it does not have to be, because it can sound kind of frightening to somebody. You mean I'm going to have to go through all that? No, you don't. Right? really, you
just
don't.
have to feel the black cloud of it come through. Like for me anyway, that's what mine feels like.
Yes. Yeah. But once you realize what's actually happening, even though the sensations may be very unpleasant, they're no longer threatening or frightening. The level of suffering is not the same. Because there's wisdom present now.
Yeah, I think that I got more comfortable through this process because, well, a couple of things. One thing was I used to run marathons, and along the way of running marathons, I got some very tight muscles. And so I learned about this thing called trigger point massage. Like you have a little trigger point ball, like a tennis ball or whatever, and you stick it where it hurts and then into the trigger point, the part that feels electric and like it's on fire. And then you just breathe through it. And as you just breathe through it, then the thing will dissolve. It'll just kind of, it'll go away. It'll untangle or unpack or whatever it is that's causing that congestion that causes the pain. So that taught me, oh, okay, if I'm with the pain and the intensity and I just breathe through it and present with it, it'll eventually like loosen up. And
Yes.
then it'll go somewhere else or it'll just disappear.
It'll dissipate. It'll go back into the void out of which it came. We have to understand that suffering is our psychological resistance. That's all it is. Where there is resistance, there is suffering. Where there is no resistance, there is no suffering. And I'm not talking about pain. There can be pain there. But if there is no resistance to the pain, we don't have the layers of suffering. And there's a big, big difference. You can be with pain and actually be content, right? Just letting life be what life is. But if there is resistance, there's this feeling it shouldn't be here. That's an inner tension that you're fighting with what's actually here. And that's a fight you can't win. And so we end up going back into the habits of suppression and denial and reframing anything to get away from it, which means nothing is actually shifting, nothing is changing. But if we realize that it is our resistance that creates suffering, and there's a very big difference between suffering and pain. Life has no suffering in it. Suffering is completely a creation of the mind. And that's what learning how to allow yourself to feel what you're feeling when you feel it ends suffering, because there's no resistance to it. And it is the most rarefied state you can achieve. It is pure peace, because you have no resistance to life anymore.
Yeah, and I think that there's tools that help you do that, and on the other side of doing it, well, then you do get relief, but you have to let go of that need for relief at first in order for the relief to come. So it's sort of funny that way.
What's amazing about it is when there's resistance, we actually keep the pain in place.
Yeah, it stays because you're denying its truth. It's kind of like every time I would say something and my mom would go, "You're crazy," or "You're just making this up." Well, that just makes me dig it, but I dig in my heels. I'm like, no, I'm not crazy. I'm not making it up. And then she's like, well, yeah, you are even more crazy now than you are. So now we have a tug of war over whose reality is correct. So what's happened for me with my soul journey is that my soul's been like, okay, put the rope down. You're correct. I'm correct at the same time.
Yes.
Well, now there's no need to tug a war over that.
That's right. There's no fight.
Because you're both right.
Yes.
And it feels like that's the pain too. It's like saying to the pain, okay, you're correct. You're experiencing this and you want to share it with me. So I'm correct too, that I don't want this, but I'm going to listen to you, you know? So it's like both correct. Like,
That's exactly it. We sit in the middle of just this bundle of contradictions, right? And they're all very natural. There's a part of us that just is dying, just yearns for freedom and evolution and growth, right? And there's another part of us that doesn't want to change anything, is only concerned about safety. These are very different aspects of ourselves, and they're both real, right? I call one the tribe, I call the other the nymph. You know, that conflict between safety and freedom. And if you take one side or the other, you create an irreconcilable conflict. But if you step out of that, if you don't, both sides are right. Of course I want to be safe, but I also want to be free. And so the problem is that those two energies have been fighting instead of cooperating. So if you step into this third role, which I like to call the peacemaker, and you're not taking sides, right? You know, both of them are there, both of them are legitimate. And all of a sudden now, there's this completely different inner space in which safety can participate in freedom, right? And secure you so that you can grow safely, so that those walls expand in a way that doesn't, just doesn't freak us out, but also gives increasing amount of growth, of ability to grab an opportunity, of do things we hadn't done before, which if you're in conflict, the system simply wants to shut that down. Because it works. If your nervous system, the safety mechanism, if it could, would throw you in the basement and lock the door and just give you food every now and then because it knows you're safe now. But obviously, we want a little bit more life than that, right? So it has to find different strategies. Let me tell you a story about it because it's much more interesting. The very first time I discovered this, which eventually led to inner reconciliation, I had been, I've been my teaching and stuff. I'd gotten my personal practice for spiritual coaching and the like to a certain point, but I kept hitting this wall. Everything I did would just go to here and go, boom, no further, no further, no further. And I tried everything, every little trick I knew, right? I'd visualize and, until my, veins were popping out of my head, right? And nothing, absolutely nothing was having any effect whatsoever. And I thought, what the hell? What is going on? And one day I just, in complete exasperation, I just closed my eyes, put my hands on my lap and go, what is happening? What is going on? And immediately this picture came into my mind. I was sitting at a conference table, and all around the conference table were Secret Service agents. They had the little skinny ties and the black suits and sunglasses and the radio in their ear. And one of them was like right here. His face was right here. It was like Smith from The Matrix, right? The sunglasses and everything, very stern. And I was, all of a sudden, here I am in the middle of this, like going, okay, who are you? No answer, right? Oh, it's not a who, right? Well, why are you here? I said, we're here to keep you safe. I said, safe? Safe from what? From everything. Everything? Everything. Can I do? No. I mean, usually he would cut me off, right? Well, what about no? Oh, well, what about, but me can, oh, you're the worst. So you have to protect me from me. But yes, we have to protect you from you, and we have to protect everybody else from you, right? This is the conversation, right? Going, okay, I get it. And it was dawning on me that I was having a conversation with an archetype, that this was this part of my energy that was actually speaking, that energy of pure safety, right? I said, okay, I get it. I get it. You got to keep me safe, right? Tell me this. Would it be possible for you to keep me safe outside the door? It's like really crowded in here. His face changed. Okay, but I'm going to be right outside. And at that second, the entire image just fell away. And all of a sudden, it was like this. It was like all of a sudden, my lungs got a capacity like 3 times larger. It was just all of a sudden, it was like, what just happened? It was just all of a sudden this, this freedom, right, started happening. It's probably within a month. I had a podcast. I had 25,000 downloads. Everything started to expand, and it was like, oh, and it just got me so curious about it that it eventually led to what I call inner reconciliation, and how I teach the chakras, and a whole bunch of stuff just kind of flowed out of that. And as I began to experiment that, and I started trying it on coaching and having these little dialogues with these inner beings, right? These archetypal characters. And it was just amazing, to the point where I don't have a technique anymore. I just talk. I just create a space that's completely safe for whatever energy that wants to come out. I help the person stay in that energy. And sometimes the weirdest stuff comes up from, 8 lifetimes ago. And I mean, it's amazing, the stuff that comes up.
Oh,
And I
yeah.
just go, okay.
Okay, that's what it is.
that's what it is. Because I don't teach the past life regressions and things like that. It's like that. I didn't have. I said, yeah, maybe but there it is. Okay, I completely accept whatever it has to say, and the end result is this open healing space that takes care of itself. It actually knows what to do when you take the dam away. Right? The river knows where to go. It knows how to get to the ocean if you take all the rocks out of it.
Yeah, the
So,
rocks. They sure do dam up the river.
yeah.
So, yeah,
There's no problem with the river. The river's fine, right?
yeah,
We have to
exactly.
and we actually just have to take out enough rocks. The river will push the rest of them.
Yeah, I'm experiencing that now, actually. My river is flowing. And it's happening even more and more, like crazy amazing, with my soul energy coming through into this physical body. And when I'm speaking now at a gathering, like I did this past weekend, it's like it fills the whole room, the energy. Like it's like this huge bright white light, just like bam. People are
Yes.
feeling it. They're like, oh my God, I'm feeling that back here. It's like, and it's coming, the wisdom's coming out. Like I'm like, I wish I recorded it actually, and I'm gonna start recording them because I don't remember the analogies, right? Like I remember some of the
Right.
analogies, but I don't remember all of them because they're so fast. And it just like pours out. I'm in amazement and awe, and I feel like it's just happening. I'm there, but I'm not there. I'm present, but I'm I don't know. It's like
No, it's exactly the right way to
it's so
express it.
amazing.
You are, but you aren't. Yeah.
I'm there, but I'm not there.
You're in the realm of the mystic, right? I mean, this stuff is inexplicable. We don't really have language for it. It's non-dual. It is, you're it and not it at the same time, right? I'm the receiver and I'm the transmitter. And I am the room and I'm filling the room, and yet I'm standing here and it's coming out of this mouth and I'm hearing it for the first time.
Yeah, hearing it for the first time. And then at one point I lost track of the flow, and I'm standing there, I was like, oops, I lost the flow. And I was like, just a second. And then it started coming through again. I was like, oh, okay. Because there was an interruption in the flow because somebody had to ask another question. And I was like, oh, okay, well, never mind. And then they asked their question, and then it started up again. So it was the intelligence of the whole thing that it knew there was an important question needed to be asked, broke
Yes.
my flow so I would shut up. Then that person asked the question, then we were in a different flow. So it was like, whoa. I mean,
Yeah, that's the true self. That's what sages have been talking about forever. That's the true being. That's the great I am, the non-physical intelligence that is beyond space and time and shows up as every single individual. The Sufis say, wherever the eye lands, it sees the face of God. Right? I mean, that's all there is that one. We imagine there's others. We imagine that we're all individual little things trying to work it out ourselves. And it's simply not true.
it's not
There's
true.
only
No.
one of us here that is completely in love with its own self and is just infinitely expressive with an inexhaustible supply of creative
Creativity.
juice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To design all these beings, all these multivariate, seemingly separate instantiations of itself. so that we can all experience how wonderful it is to be so different, but really we're
It's
not.
unfathomable. And we're this, yes, I mean, that's the mystery. Yeah. It's so different and yet absolutely the same. It's
Absolutely the
like,
same. That's why I love so like I love White Eagle, who's my version of it, right? But I know at the
yeah.
same level, it's all the same thing. But I also like the
Yes.
fact that it's White Eagle because it's like, oh, I have White Eagle. You know, it's like
Well,
mine.
it's because it's
You know,
it's beautiful. Well, it is White Eagle.
it is. I mean, it really is. It exists.
Yeah,
He
it
exists.
is.
It's a being.
A-
He exists, and we're
absolutely.
all part of the same
It,
thing.
yes, and it's the same essence that that takes countless numbers of forms. It has no limit. It has no limits on the form. And we say it's us, it's you, it's me.
It's us.
It's what's hearing us talk right now. The one who's listening to
It's
us right
listening to
now
all of us right now.
is the same thing that's speaking right now.
Yeah. You know, one thing I was like concerned about a little while ago, I think it was this weekend when I was doing, because I had such a powerful experience channeling. It was the most powerful thing I've had yet. It's coming through more and more powerful. But this time I was like, whoa, like, I mean, it's just like so much. And I was just amazed by it. I was like, wow, like what came out of my mouth? And I was high on it. Like I was so high that I almost couldn't sleep, you know, that night. Like it was hard to go to sleep. I felt like my brain had just been lit up like Las Vegas. And then I thought, okay, that later that night I was like, oh, White Eagle, you're not going to pick somebody else, are you? Because I really like you. And I think you should stay with me. Because I will go along and do what you want because this is really awesome and I don't want it to stop. So then I was like, oh, Carrie, that's dangerous territory because now you have like a condition on your happiness. And that's not a very good place to be. So see, I have all these kinds of dialogues going on inside of me.
Right.
But White Eagle is like woke me up in the middle of the night. It's like, Carrie, I designed you to do this job. So it's
Yeah.
fine. You have
Yeah.
no other job. This is your purpose. You're not going to be replaced. Is it like somebody else that's going to do your job? You know, it's like you to do this
Yeah,
job.
that's right.
So
Yeah.
you're
Okay.
okay.
We're moving in a new sun now. You're not the sun anymore. Right.
Yeah,
It's like, yeah, it's like,
you know exactly what I'm talking about. Oh,
yes, yes, yes,
these
of course. And
questions
of
we
course
have.
yes, well, that's the questions are the conditioning we received, right? They're not even really our questions.
Mm.
They're just the repetitive patterns that we haven't become conscious enough to recognize that they're just a repetitive pattern of thought. And everyone listening can, I mean, there's no difference, right? If you see that it is just a thought and not an actual truth,
Mm.
it was just believed so long, it was experienced as if it was the truth, because that's the power that we have, that we form our perceptions,
I
which makes our
see.
life.
Yeah, you know what this is? This is the mother wound GP because this is like believing that the love will be taken away if I don't behave the right way. Then the love will
Yes.
all be taken away from me because it happens so often. I had totally conditional love, you know, my
Yes, I
childhood.
did. I did as well. Yeah, and so you train. The nervous system picks up on that, and I use the word the nervous system. It's just our energy responding to the environment before we're consciously participating at all, right? It's the animal part of us. It's the instinctual part of us that knows exactly how to mold itself to the environment. And so it draws conclusions, not conscious conceptual conclusions like we do. I call them energetic assumptions about the nature of
Mm.
the experience, because the reality for the child, this is the sum total of it. So the nervous system, it rightfully concludes, love is conditional. That's a fact, because in this realm, it is a fact, right? It doesn't make this stuff up, right? And that's why it becomes so ingrained. It feels so true to us, because at one time it was. And the whole energy then had to compensate for the fact that love was conditional, which meant your whole life is trying to create the conditions that are going to bring
Yes, to bring love.
that love. Yes, indeed. And of course, the problem is that will never work, because because it isn't true. Love isn't conditional, right? You have to go all the way back to prior to that original innocence, prior to that that message getting received and becoming an energetic assumption embedded in the body. You say, oh, wait a minute, it isn't true. When that dawns on you as an understanding, now when those thoughts of conditional love come up, you can recognize them for what they are, and you no longer participate. You are now
So,
free of that.
so here's the rewrite on that. So here's the rewire, the green wire, so to speak, is that love is unconditional, and my biological mother's access to it was intermittent.
Yes.
So that's why.
Yeah. And I'll take it one step further. Love is what you are.
Yeah,
It
it's in
isn't a
my
state.
being. It's not
It
out
isn't an
there.
emotion. It is being itself. Love is life, is being.
Is being.
Satchit Ananda. It is the nature of being itself, which means it can't be conditional. And it is one of those aspects, you might say, that expresses itself in countless ways. Just infinite variety of the ways in which love can manifest itself, and yet it is all love. Love is what you are. It isn't something you achieve. It isn't a conditional, of course, but it isn't even something that could ever be taken away from you.
It's our awareness about it that's changing. It's the
Exactly.
awareness of it that changes.
We become conscious of it. Yes, we become conscious beings.
So a
And then
person who's not aware of it acts in certain ways differently than a person who's aware of love.
exactly. The one who isn't aware of it will act out conditional love and really believe that that's the nature of existence. That's the nature of their experience. But it is their own belief in it that's creating the experience. We have to get to challenging those fundamental beliefs, because that's the power of human consciousness. If I believe it, I will experience it as reality. It will form all of my perceptions, and I will filter out anything that contradicts that, and I will amplify everything that confirms it. And we become ignorant of this relationship we have with our own experience. We think it's happening to us and not a projection of us. And therefore we get into a fight and we try to change conditions, or we gaslight, or we reframe a million and one ways to try to change the picture, not realizing, turn around. It's the projector you want to focus on, not the images on the screen. You
Yeah,
can yell at the screen all day and the actors aren't going to hear you.
that's so true. Gosh, that's beautiful. So that's a good, so let's get practical. So there's a lot of this going on in the planet right now, GP. Okay, like there's
Oh,
a lot
really?
more people that are realizing love. Okay.
Yes.
There's a lot of people on the planet right now who are waking up to a level of consciousness similar to what we're currently experiencing, where we're aware of love, we're aware of being love, and we're aware that love exists, for example, unconditionally all the time. And as we wake up to know that there's love and that we're experiencing it, we also notice that there's maybe a bunch of people who haven't yet really realized that yet and are still engaging in the old paradigm, what I like to call the Monopoly game. You know, they're still playing Monopoly and they're like, I'm winning, so I don't want to quit this game because I'm winning, I'm winning, I'm winning, I'm winning, and I'm so winning. And I don't know who else says that, I'm winning. But like, that game, we're, you know, if you ever had to sit around the family table playing that after a holiday, like you, at some point you want to get up from that game. You're so sick of that game. So like, I think a bunch of us are sick of that game and we don't want to play that game anymore, but there's some people really addicted to it still that are not aware of love yet. So what do we do with them? Because you can't really wake people up before they're ready, right? So what can we do?
Well, it's a beautiful question, and believe me, I've spent years thinking about it. I mean, the answer is love, right? I mean, to totally embrace them as they are. In the very same way, you would embrace that very unhappy, unpleasant energy within yourself. If you simply drop the barriers between yourself and others, you find that their pain is your pain, that that they are experiencing the darkness, you know exactly what they're going through, and at the same time you are quite aware of the original innocence that's actually still there. So it relieves all sense of condemnation. There's a beautiful you know, Christ on the cross said, "Father, forgive them, they know not what they do." Now, that word "forgive" is beautiful. Our modern version of it, the way it's kind of been handed down to us, the way it's been interpreted through Christianity, starting at the Nicene Council, is it means to be pardoned, right? It means you did it, you're guilty, you should be punished, but I'm letting you off the hook. Aren't I nice, right? The actual word he used, translated in forgiveness, means to be found not guilty, to be vindicated of wrongdoing. Now that casts a completely different picture.
That sure does. So how can we find somebody not guilty of child abuse?
They're unconscious. Now that doesn't mean we don't stop them. We don't we don't interfere. We bring as much light and as practical as we can, but without condemnation. We protect without condemning, because it's simply unconscious. When you become conscious, you cannot do that. You have to be so your heart shut down enough that you cannot feel the impact you have on other people. The moment you do, the moment you actually feel the repercussions of your own actions and the effect that it has on others, it is a self-correcting system. You simply can't do it anymore. It just hurts too much. But there's an opening that has to take place, a breaking open that has to take place in order for that kind of empathetic level of empathy to occur. And it will occur because at the essence of us, we are all in fact one. If I see myself, somebody who clearly needs to become conscious, I see it as an aspect of myself that needs to become more conscious. So the highest level of attainment in Buddhism, it's called the Mahayana, which is the great vehicle. And it isn't the attainment of enlightenment. It isn't, being a Buddha. It's a bodhisattva. And the bodhisattva is one, well, the bodhisattva vow is very simple. It says, suffering beings are numberless. I vow to save them all. And the bodhisattva will actually even put off his own going into nirvana or heaven, whatever you want to call it, until he brings all beings with him. So it is this incredibly beautiful spirit of pure love. And the bodhisattva gets embodied in the goddess in the East. The most well-known of all the goddesses of Asia is Kannon, also known as Kanzion, also known as Kwanun, Kuan Yin, has all sorts of different names. And she is the goddess of wisdom and compassion. She is this perfect blending of the wisdom that can see right through the mistake, the unconsciousness, but with the sweetest, open, non-aggressive, loving compassion that will bring anybody to the fore. Christ is the perfect example of it. Being wrongly accused, being beat up and tortured, and he refused to impute any guilt to the people who were perpetrating it. He didn't even defend himself and asked, well, who are you? I'm here to bear witness to the truth. And if we could adopt that kind of an attitude, I just really want to make a huge sign, blessed are the peacemakers, and hang it in the Pentagon. Because we need to be that. We need to actually be unconditional love. And that means unconditional, even for the most unlovable. And I find the more I'm willing to be with my unlovable parts that actually come out of the darkness, and we find they weren't unlovable at all, that they just gotten bad press. I just characterized them that way as a way of keeping them suppressed. I can turn that same kind of loving attention towards reprehensible people that are, basically power hungry and running the world, trying to run the world, but they can't do it.
Yeah, it's so interesting you're saying all this. I got a really big download, I don't know, a month ago or so about accountability. It was when I was waking up. And luckily I brought my phone with me to the bathroom because then I downloaded the whole thing. I was like, wow. But it was about playing cards. A lot of things come to me in game form. I don't know why, but I think it's fun metaphor. So it was showing me playing cards, right? And it was showing me like a full deck. Like you got like all these cards. And each one of the cards is that person did something wrong to me and they're held accountable for it and they're going to have to pay for that. And then this person did this and they're going to have to pay for that thing. And so your whole hand is filled up with cards, which are basically karma, because you're holding somebody else accountable for doing something that you imagine that they did, or that you think you know that they did, or whatever it is that they haven't made amends for, right? So you're going to hold on to that. So who's holding on to the card? And by the way, the game of life is Uno. So you're really screwed if you hold on to all those cards, because no one is going to take those cards out of your hand because you're playing Uno. Okay? They're not going to be nice and take cards from you. Maybe a fool would take some. I took some from my mom, because I was a big heart, I would take some. But then I can't process them. They're not mine. So I can't do anything with that. So we actually can't do anything with our own karma. Nobody else can heal our karma. We are the ones holding the accountability cards, and we're the ones who think there was something that needed accountability. The other person doesn't. If they thought that, they would have their own card for that. And if they don't, they don't.
And if they don't, they don't. Yes.
If they don't, they don't.
We are the cell, the prisoner, and the prison guard.
So I was like, Uno!
No.
Last card! Because I don't want to play that Monopoly game anymore. Back to the other metaphor. That's like trying to get stuff from other people, and I own you, and you have to pay me money to land on my spot, and all of that. This whole thing is like
That's what happens. When the game's over, it all goes back in the box.
It's not ours anyway. That's the funniest thing about it.
Not ours.
The earth doesn't, like, the indigenous people were the smartest ones, which is why I'm pretty sure this is why the second wave chose people with this sort of medicine to embody earth wisdom, because indigenous people know that the earth doesn't belong to them.
Yeah.
Like, we are here by the grace of the earth. It created us out of her materials, and we don't own it.
We don't own it. The whole idea of ownership is weird. It's weird.
You don't even own your body. Like, it was a gift, right? Did you buy it? I mean,
exactly. Where did you buy it?
Right.
Even the stuff you do buy. I mean, the people who made the materials, designed the things. I mean, there's a piece of everyone in here.
And even water, GP, this part freaks people out when I tell them this, because when I heard it, it kind of freaked me out. This water I'm drinking, it's right here.
Right. Same glass
that passed the lips of every creature on earth. That sip I just took, including every human being, has had a sip of this water. This water right here. I'm going to sip again. That's amazing, isn't it? Every human being on earth has tasted that water.
Yes.
Right there, that one.
Yes.
And pissed it out too. So it's a closed system. I mean,
it is a closed system.
This is who we are.
Yeah, and this is the beauty of it. To genuine spiritual awakening comes not from transcending this, but from the total embrace of it. That's the real awakening. It is not some distant place you get to where it's all angels singing and the like. Again, in Zen Buddhism, the ultimate achievement of Zen Buddhism is the ordinary human being. Those are Buddha's words. The ordinary human being is the Buddha. And Buddha means the awakened one. Not one who awakened, but the awakened one. It is the one that's awakening. You know, it's coming out of different mouths and different forms and different ways, but it is simply God's waking up to herself. And so, yeah, everything is, we're exchanging, our bodies, of course, are constantly exchanging cells. Cells are dying and being reborn millions of times a second, right? We just don't notice it. But we're also exchanging on the electron level, the level of atoms and electrons. We're actually constantly interact with our environment. This picture behind me has got some of my electrons now, and I've got some of it, right? The whole room. I mean, the reality of what we are experiencing right now just blows our mind. If anybody's ever stopped for a moment to consider it, you just kind of go, whoa, oh, oh, you
That's what
hyperventilate.
people are asking me, like, well, how do we fix this situation on the earth and stop all of this stuff? And I said, well, first focus on your own self-actualization. Focus on your awakening to your true self. Like, focus on that, because that right there creates more awakening. And the awakening is the only thing that's going to, change the unconscious behavior, is making it conscious, right? So
Yes.
When we have consciousness on the planet, with more people being conscious, and that increases the level of consciousness, which is sort of like a quotient. So at some point we'll reach a tipping point of consciousness, and the unconsciousness will also be waking up simply by being in proximity with the consciousness. Because the more consciousness there is, the more consciousness there is in the closed system that we're in.
That is correct. Yeah. And that's the inevitable outcome from it. And there's even theories about that. I think it's Rupert Sheldrake is a biologist and studied all sorts of, he's a very fascinating guy. But he came up with what he called the morphic resonance. And it's been demonstrated that they'll teach a lab rat a trick in some lab, like in New York, right? They teach the same trick to a rat in Peking. They'll learn it faster, even though there's absolutely no connection. The third time it's faster. The fourth time it speeds up all over the world with absolutely no communication between whatsoever. And he just called it the morphic field. There's just there's this connect. I saw it happen. It was very early on that I had an awakening. There wasn't much of it there in my town. Geez, a little town in Illinois, there was nothing, right? None of this stuff. And I just watch it compound and grow and expand and explode, starting probably about the mid 70s, early 80s. And it's just gotten, it's like incredible now words, the word enlightenment or awakening, I'd never heard that when I was a kid. It was a kid. Now hey man, you woke, right?
It's a thing now. It's like a slogan. Plant medicine helps with that. I mean, it's a quicker path, but not necessarily. It could be, if you have to be ready for it. That's the thing. If you're not ready for it, your ego can dig its heels into anything. Like you said, your protector system.
You can also commandeer anything.
Yes, it can. It can take credit for the awakening too.
Yeah, and it'll want to. I often I think it was Francis Lucia used this analogy, and I think it's really great. That how in a circus, the death-defying feats of the acrobats, it's this incredibly amazing thing, and they're done. The crowd jumps to their feet for a standing ovation, and the clowns come out and take a bow.
Yeah.
That's the ego.
Yeah, the clowns. Well, the other thing I've realized about the ego is that a lot of people, and I certainly thought this at first when I first started this awakening process, that to be egoic meant to be aggressive and assertive and narcissistic in a way. But I've also found that there's lots of ways it can come out. It can also come out in self-deprecation. It can come out in martyrdom. It can come, there's lots of flavors for this. So, you know,
The ego is simply an attempt to create a self, period. It can be a
period.
grand
Yes.
self, it can be a horrible self. It doesn't care, as long as it has a feeling that it is somebody. And when we're not awake, we believe that impulse to be somebody is actually, well, you are already somebody, but you've forgotten. And so now you're, well, who am I this? And then self-improvement. So now
When
I'm
you
going to
start
try.
thinking about who you are, that's when you're in the trap.
Right, because the mind can't deal with the absolute
No.
explosion of reality that you really are.
The less thinking, I think, the better, you know? It takes a while to get into that space of not thinking. Like, even as we're talking, I'm not thinking the talking. The talking is happening, right? I'm being the talk. The talking is coming through. It's hard to explain this to people, but I used to think the talking, like you would be talking, and then I would be thinking the thing that would be saying after you were done saying the thing that you were saying. And now there's just a talking.
Now there's just talking. Yeah, it's just happening. And that is how life works. That's how everything works. Everything in your life is happening like that. But we think we're doing it. And so we try to get in, we muddle with it, we tinker, right? Right? Just like watching my thoughts to see what I'm going to say, right? Life is a constant, spontaneous unfoldment of itself. And once you realize that, you are life, you're one with life. And life is totally benevolent. It's taking care of everything, including the awakening of consciousness.
Yeah, I was well, you know, the Evolutionary Business Council, they invited me to do their final presentation at their retreat, the annual retreat, which I was like, wow, you're kind of giving me a, a pretty important spot. I was concerned, you know, I was like, I want to do a good job, you know. And so I had the whole thing typed up because I know we're all concerned about conscious language and all of these things, and I didn't want to mess up with saying some shit or something like that. So I was putting my notes together, and I had little note cards and everything printed up just so I could flip really easily and say everything. And that morning I got woken up an hour early on my alarm clock. It was not set for that time, but I got woken up with the alarm at that an hour early. And I was like, white eagle. Um, and then I heard this voice in my, I said, why are you waking me up this early? And the voice said, Carrie, we're not doing that speech. I was like, damn, I knew it. I was like, okay, what are we doing? It's like, trust me. I was like, okay, but I don't know what's going to happen. And these are like 100 of my peers, and I really don't want to make a mistake or something, you know, like, and he's like, don't worry about it. Just meet me in the now, because that's where I am. Like, cool. So I met him in the now, and it was awesome. I had no idea what was going to happen, and it was great. So I want to watch it back just because I just want to satisfy myself. But it's so cool the way it feels. Like, to me, now that I've experienced being in the now and having the energy run through, I prefer it to knowing what's going to happen.
God, yes. It's
Yeah,
alive. It's alive.
I would much rather have that than to know what's going to happen and then just simply deliver it. Like, I even was, because I'm a manifestor by design, that's my design. I was even spotting, like, trying to see ahead, like, well, what's he going to say? You know, it's like, okay, like trying to like view into the future, like the potential of what might happen. And then I kept getting like, kind of like, stop that, you know, because you're stop creating things in the future, because we're going to be in the now. So stop creating that stuff. Don't do that.
That is the ego in action.
Trying to figure it out and see what's going to happen.
It's the impulse to control.
Yeah, trying to control it.
Make life go according to a particular plan or form.
Okay, so now GP,
Yeah.
here we
That's
are,
it.
the law of attraction.
Yeah,
Everybody trying to manifest the outcome that they want.
correct. Yeah. Yeah, it is a very remedial understanding of how things function. It is true. Obviously, a shift in thought and feeling is going to have a profound effect on your life. And then the ego grabs a hold of it and says, great, now I
I
can
can
get
create
everything
what I want.
I want. Nobody stops long enough to question the I that is saying this is what I want. Because that I, by its nature, is lack. Right? That's why it's trying to fill itself up. So the very act of trying to manifest that way, in fact, does exactly the opposite, because the dominant energy is lack. You have to see through whose desire is that? Did that desire arise from me knowing who I am and awake and coming from a place of total abundance, or is that desire coming from a feeling of I need something and I gotta have this, right? And it's very easy to tell. You feel into it and go, oh my God, that's lack.
Yeah, I just got
Yeah.
jolted.
and, and that was the the good side of the whole law of attraction thing coming out is a lot of people finally began to see that they are not victims, that they can actively participate in their lives. The downside is that the ego went crazy, and it went and just look at all the advertisements that are still going on for law of attraction courses, and that it's all about the stuff. It's it's some guy standing with supermodels in front of 10 cars and a mansion, right? It's all this completely materialistic model of it. I heard an interview with Neil Donald Walsh, the guy who wrote Conversations with God, and he said, I said, I watched the movie The Secret, and he says it was really great, but there was not one mention about how about ending world hunger, how about giving everybody a home and education, how about, I mean, there was absolutely nothing altruistic about it
Yeah.
whatsoever, purely ego satisfaction. And so it is true. The foundation of it is actually true. But it can't go far enough. It doesn't go far enough. We have to come to see ourselves as we really are. We have to stop believing that we are this egoic mind. That image that we formed when we were absolutely young and impressionable, living in a world like this. We created a self-image that fit kind of okay in this world, but we don't live in there anymore. And in fact, we still think of ourselves in those terms. We're still carrying an image of being mortal, of being limited, of being finite, of being stuck. All of these things become a sense of identity, right? And that sense of identity is what we call the ego. I mean, the ego isn't a thing. It's simply a particular collection of thoughts. It's one collection of a repeating pattern of thoughts that all happen to use the word I.
Yeah. This is so interesting. I want to share something with you. 2020 is a year of clear vision. And boy, some clear vision's been coming in. It's been like, wow, this is amazing. One day I was at the park after 2020 turned over into 2020, and I walk in with my husband at the park. It's near sundown. And ahead of us on this trail is this boisterous little boy who's so excited. And he's dancing around and he's moving his arms and he's going like this and looking. And I'm like, what's he doing? And I look and I see he's looking at his shadow and he's watching his shadow move on the ground.
Oh.
And all of a sudden I realized that's the soul. It's like the little boy is the soul and the shadow is the personality self.
Beautiful.
And it's so delighted that it's making us move and talk and do all this stuff.
It's having so much fun.
Look at the way I can make it do this. Or, yeah, it's so interesting. That was
Oh,
profound. When I realized that, it was like, wow, you mean I'm a shadow?
well, not you aren't. No, you're the soul.
I'm the soul. Yeah.
Yeah, you're the soul. The shadow is simply these thoughts and feelings and the form. But the form isn't an entity. It's not a sentient thing. There's not a big self and a little self. There's only the self. It isn't a collection, right? There's only the one, and it just speaks through many voices and hears through many ears. It's impossible for us to fathom that with our minds.
Yeah, but I'm feeling it as you're speaking it, and it's really true. Like the life that I used to live before, I can't even
Yeah,
touch it. Like
it was
it's
well,
not
it was
there.
it was completely imaginary. You
Yeah.
weren't there.
I would no. That woman is not. Yeah.
Yeah, she never existed.
Pieces of me
She,
were shining through, but the
yes,
rest of that was a fabrication. So
total fabrication. That is what the ego is. It is a fabricated sense of identity. And the more you examine it, you find there's nothing there.
there's nothing there. I went to try to access some of it, and because I went to California where I used to live, and I was looking around the streets, and I was like, I know I used to live and walk down here and all this stuff, but I just don't remember it. And I was in East West Bookshop doing my talk, and I used to do work for them years ago, 20 years ago. I used to do their little program. I was use my design skills to do it for them. And one of the guys recognized me, and I was like, "Whoa, you do?" Because I don't remember anything. And I said, "So, do you remember me?" He's like, "No, I just remember the red hair. That's it." I was like, "Dang." It's almost like I wanted some like some confirmation or something, but it's like it's gone. So it's
It's
just
gone.
gone, just gone. It's all right. You can let it die, right?
Yeah, well, it doesn't really even die because it was never born. It was
It's
just
never. It was just an idea.
like a cartoon character dying, right?
Yeah.
I mean, no, it was
Mm.
always a non-sentient thought form. That's all it was. And we breathed life into it because we believed that's who we were. So I start acting it out, and I am real. And so I suddenly my Mickey Mouse comes to life, right? But there is no
Yeah,
Mickey.
making my Mickey Mouse come to life. Exactly. Like that little boy making his
Yeah,
shadow move.
making his shadow move, but he knew his shadow. Once you know that that's what it is, there's no ego there anymore. Now, this becomes the vehicle of self-expression.
Oh, wow. That's so cool.
Yeah, it moves. In Buddhism, they call it it's a transformation from the egoic mind to the great perfect mirror mind,
Mm,
which is just this beautiful, responsive, transparent, creative force that is the self-made manifest is the true mind, because the universe is nothing but mind.
mm.
That's all there is that's all there is of creation, the essence. It's the mind of God is the universe, is us, but it's more than that.
So much more. Wow,
Yeah,
we could go on forever at this.
we
But that's
could
been
into
fascinating. Woo! Take a deep breath, everybody. It's got an activation courtesy of GP Walsh.
mm, that's right.
Woo!
We're recording this and people are going to watch this.
Yeah, I
That's right.
know.
I've just been totally here with you, just totally engaged.
Yeah, well, we just created a huge activation for people. That's great. That's
Lovely,
awesome.
lovely.
Lovely.
Yeah.
Well, so tell us a little bit about how people can work with you, GP. How can they get started with you? What you got anything coming up you want to share?
Oh, I always have things going on. Uh, gpwalsh.com will kind of get you up to date. I'm doing a course on the chakras and my rather unique spin on them as archetypes rather than as swirling vortexes of light. Um, and I do a live stream every Sunday at 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Pacific, and it's like 9 o'clock, GMT, Greenwich Mean Time, on YouTube. So just YouTube/GP Walsh. I do that every week live, and I just basically just answer questions for people, and the replays are all there. I think I'm up to like 650 videos on YouTube.
That's a
Last
lot of videos.
last count, yeah. I've been on YouTube for 10 years, right? So there's a lot of stuff there. Some are like 10 minutes long, some are 3 hours long. So so
Depending on the topic and how it needs to be
yeah,
traversed.
yeah. the satsangs go on for 2 hours, and I just basically field questions. And some of the questions, the answers can be very fast, and some are take a little bit more time to work with, but they're always tailored to the level of consciousness of the person asking the question.
Mm-hmm.
And I've got I've got classes that I do. I'm going to be doing a live retreat in Victoria, British Columbia, coming up in the summer. Just gpwalsh.com is the best place to find out what's happening. And I do actually work with people privately to work on energy healing stuff or spiritual inquiry, however they want to do it. And you can sign up for a session on my site there as well. So that's kind of an array of ways to
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah, looking forward to your chakra class. So that's going to be on your website too?
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, great. Well, GP, it's been a pleasure as usual. Love connecting with you and getting spun up in your webs of storytelling, which is really such an artful way of awakening. So beautiful. Thank you for sharing your wisdom today. And we're going to give people kisses on the way out. Would you like to join me?
Sure.
Okay, here we go. Here they come, people. Hey, by the way, don't forget, this episode. Like this episode, share it out, everybody, and make sure that this gets shared out to people, more people find this, because this is a good one. I know you guys think so. So please like, subscribe, and share. Okay, here come the kisses.
How many we doing?
However many you want.
Oh, okay. Lots of kisses.
Okay, lots of kisses. So kisses. Love you, people. Lots of love for you. So much love. So good. We'll see you next time on Soul Nectar Show, everybody. Bye for now.